had seen his images years ago in advertising, but I never knew who he was. And it was in the context of considering this project that I made the connection to who he was and started to do research and read his blog and come to know who he was in a much deeper way. If you spend several months doing research on a particular artist, in the end, sometimes you come to know them in a way that not even the family knows them. And I've had instances where the artists who I've worked on in the first review, I didn't know that I liked them personally, but by the end, they became part of my family, like all the people I work on.
What did I think of Rodney's work? Original, unique, really didn't look like anybody else's work. It still doesn't. A lot of photographers were drawn to surrealism, and they did it in their own way, but I don't think anybody did it quite like Rodney. And I don't think he really influenced anybody. I think he was sui generis. Having a gallery, that's what we look for, originality and something special that nobody else does. And that's what Rodney had.
When I saw Rodney's work, I realized that he possessed a very particular way of seeing the world. And there was this, of course, surrealistic, poetic, and in some ways anti-fashion. It was very almost logical for me to think of the connection in some ways to the simplicity of Shaker architecture, of which I was a huge, I have great respect for it, its purity, its honesty, and its poetry. And I thought that it would allow Rodney a number of opportunities to create strong images, and he certainly did. I mean, that was a very memorable group of photographs.
Actually, when Dennis mentioned honesty, I immediately thought about how, he only used film and light. And this is something that I absolutely adored in him, especially because I started modeling in the 90s. And this is what, it was normal in the 90s. But it was so refreshing, in the era of this heavy retouching and digital work. And just to see this one, super, skilled man owning it and having full control over what's happening there, having that magic wand, and he's the only one using it, it made me happy.
When I look at the work, I can see connections to Northern Renaissance painters in terms of how he's using the light, his color combinations in his later work when he began using color photography. I see many connections to surrealism. There are Hitchcockian influences. All these things are a great kind of intellectual turn on when I see pictures, and then it rings a bell, signaling something from the past that I can draw a thread or a line to. I know that he had a very special relationship with his female models, and he liked the models that he saw that were somewhat mysterious, somewhat enigmatic, and he couldn't really figure them out. That really appealed, that feminine mystery really appealed to him. And he spent a lot of time making sure that the circumstances that the model was working in were comfortable for her.
But I also think that Rodney probably did not want to figure us out because he needed that level of mystery and maybe just kind of unwrapping little bits and pieces that he needed in that time, but left everything else wrapped.
Well, the ones I liked the best were the contemplative women, and that's what most of them were. They were into themselves. They were shrouded in landscape or veils, and he had a particular woman. She wasn't expressive really, but expressed him I think.
Yeah, I think what you said was really insightful. The women in his pictures were able to express him. He was the subject.
Well, the type of models really depended on whether they were male or female. That he was looking for certain types of female models and certain types of male models. And in male models, he liked men that were acrobatic and willing to, and brave and willing to do feats of daring do.
There's something very sad about those male figures. Hard to describe, but there's a kind of loneliness and sadness about almost Chaplin-esque, something very, very looking inward, and I don't think they're fun. I think they're very sad.
Rodney wasn't an athlete, and so maybe that expressed some of his desire to be more like those men that he was depicting. But there's also a certain joie de vivre in some of the pictures where they're jumping.
What I find very fascinating about his work is basically what was just said. It's that he produced images that were layered. They were ambiguous. Your first impression could be humor. But on second viewing, third viewing, fourth viewing, all of a sudden you get the loneliness, the sadness. And I think for any work of art, and I'm including his, there needs to be ambiguity. Definitely. There has to be a revelation. It can't be the first impression.
This is one of Rodney's more famous pictures, The Twins in a Tree. And it's taken at Sneden's Landing, where he established his home and studio. And it became the backdrop for many pictures that he created during his late career. This picture is really all about the body language of the two figures. That one is looking down, one is bending backwards. And it seems like, even though these two models are twins, the distance between them is insurmountable. This is a great one. This is Taxi New York, where he's assembled 30 taxi cabs under this bridge. And I love how the bridge acts as a kind of proscenium stage for these two models. They're being presented to us like they were acting in a theater production.
Can I say something about the extreme elegance of every photograph? They're really perfection. In a gallery context, the prints are so beautifully done.
That's something we really look for, an artist who doesn't just think of pictures as images, but as objects.
His work is multifaceted, that you can talk about it from many angles. That is rare.
I think humor is probably one of the most important things a human being can have or needs to have. And he had it, and then everything was at ease. I do miss him a lot.